Today's video is for the weirdos out there. We're gonna be looking at 10 of the weirdest horror movies I've ever seen. These picks might help you discover a new favorite or warn you about movies you should avoid like the plague. Your call. My name is Daniel with the Cobwebs channel, and let's get started.
Let's go back. Can we just do that?
Keeper from 2025. Liz and Malcolm escape for a romantic weekend at a secluded cabin. When Malcolm suddenly returns to the city, Liz finds herself isolated and in the presence of a mysterious evil that reveals the cabin's secrets. So this is a brand new release I just went to see in theaters, and it's the second film this year to be made by Osgood Perkins. And he's a director I tend to be a really big fan of. I've liked every movie that he's made to one degree or another. But being the second film of this year, it feels like, is he moving too fast? He actually made it while there were some labor disputes, therefore production delays on The Monkey, which came out earlier this year. Just threw this together to keep the crew working. And now having seen it, man, Keeper is something. The thing that struck me about it right away is how tense everything feels. Even though it's about a couple who have been together for about a year now, it just feels awkward and uncomfortable, and we're not really privy to why. At the beginning, it actually reminded me a lot of A Wounded Fawn, which is another one of my favorite modern weird horror movies, but that one explains from the start why this uncomfortability is there. We know that the guy is a serial killer. We know that the woman recently got out of an abusive relationship, so she's just tense and uncomfortable just because of that. This movie doesn't have any of those answers. We have no idea, what is happening? The two lead actors are fantastic. Tatiana Maslany in the lead, who was also in The Monkey, as well as Ross F. Sutherland as the man. And as the movie goes, it became increasingly apparent to me that this film is so weird. And I found myself just incredibly curious. I spent this movie so curious as to what is going on, what is happening in this cabin, why is this bizarre Lynchian stuff occurring? And by the time secrets are revealed and this mystery is uncovered, I realized I loved this movie. I just loved it because of how bizarre it is. I think the 2020s masterpiece of weird horror cinema is James Wan's *Malignant*, and I think Keeper is the weirdest big new horror movie I've seen since that. It is so utterly bizarre. Without spoilers, I would say the subgenres this plays in are both folk horror and cosmic horror, and I wouldn't say all of it makes sense. I wouldn't say this is an airtight script. I definitely had questions by the end of it. Things I didn't really understand, why is this, why is that? But I don't care, guys. I do not care because I love weird, crazy, bonkers horror. That is what this is. It's got some of the freakiest images that I've seen in a horror movie in a long time. There's a point where a face is going to be revealed, and there's been a lot of buildup as to what this face is going to be. And I sat there what could this possibly be? How could it live up to all of this buildup, especially for somebody who's seen so many horror movies like myself? And when it was revealed, I just could not believe my eyes. It was the freakiest thing. I was flabbergasted at some of the images that this movie shows, the audacity of some of the plot developments that it has. And it looks fantastic. It's directed with so much uncomfortable tension. It's got a great soundtrack. Keeper is, for me, a keeper. Was that too cheesy? I feel kind of bad about that.
Well, he actually succeeded in designing a totally new life form. Resilient, intelligent, and I think very deadly.
Scared to Death from 1980. As a series of hideous murders are taking place, a cop and an ex-detective turned novelist investigate and discover a monstrous experiment in genetic engineering. So this is one that I checked out because Trick or Treat Studios was actually kind enough to send me some of their new figure releases, and they just released a figure for Scared to Death, specifically the Syngenor, which is the central monster in Scared to Death. And I just love this packaging. It looks like a VHS tape. You just open it up, you got a figure in there. That is so much fun. And I'd never seen this movie before they sent this to me, but I was familiar with it because Vinegar Syndrome put it out. And now that I've seen it, it's a very Vinegar Syndrome type movie. It is a super cornball 80s monster B movie in a really fun way. I had a good time with Scared to Death, while I would certainly never call it a good movie. First of all, it has got a cool monster in there. It kind of looks like the alien, the xenomorph, but also kind of gives me a Power Rangers villain kind of vibe. I loved the backstory that is uncovered about this thing and what it's actually doing to its victims. That was bizarre. Like, I've definitely never seen another movie that's exactly used this kind of lore. Our lead is a disgraced, brilliant, don't play by the rules, reluctant private investigator who's actually this sleazy crime novelist. And I enjoyed his performance. I enjoyed all the acting in this movie. Even when it's bad, it's definitely charming. And he's got this incredibly awkward date scene because of a romance that he has in here.
Excuse me. Isn't this the part of the evening that you're saying, "So, Miss Stanton, tell me a little bit about yourself"?
It is so uncomfortable. I've never seen like less chemistry in a date scene maybe in my life. But hey, they still have sex to hilarious music. He's helped by his best buddy Cop, as well as this Zooey Deschanel lookalike of a scientist who dumps tons of exposition about this genetically mutated monster. And the film has lots of walking around. Lots of like, let's cut to a random character, and they're just kind of walk around for a while until eventually they run into the Sinjanor and meet a gruesome fate. Not good, but for fans of 80s B monster movies, kind of fun.
The day may come when I no longer have need of you.
The day may come soon.
Beast of Blood from 1970. A mad scientist creates a monster, but after its head is cut off, he keeps it alive in a serum he has invented. Man, I wish the movie was half as cool as that synopsis makes it sound like it is. So this is another one I watched because Trick or Treat sent me the new figure for it. This one, a much bigger figure, and definitely my preferred of the figures. This one looks so incredibly cool. It's got the central monster from Beast of Blood, another film that I had never seen before they sent this to me, so I checked it out, and I came to find out it is the fourth in a series of 4 Filipino horror films known as the Blood Island series. Apparently Severin recently put out a 4-pack of all of these films, and I just jumped into this one not knowing it was part of a series, and that could explain my not great time with Beast of Blood. Yes, this is a weird horror movie, fully deserving of being on this list, but it is not good. In fact, I found it kind of awful. Now, it features this Elvis-looking protagonist who is absolutely impervious to women throwing themselves at him. He does it many times, clearly honoring No Nut November. So much of the movie is him walking around the jungle with this beautiful reporter who's kind of lashed herself onto him, but she gets kidnapped by the mad scientist. So we get this damsel in distress story, and you're kind of wondering, where does the monster fit in here? Well, the movie opens with him just annihilating so many people. It's like this big action scene. He's fighting off all these dudes, and it kind of promises a really good movie. But the monster isn't really going to do anything again until the very end of the film. There's barely any monster in here. Now, I did enjoy when his head is cut off and it's just sitting in this vat, and it even talks sometimes. That is by far the most fun, the most watchable stuff in this movie. It's just whenever we see this head in a vat, there's just not much to watch here. People walking around the jungle, basic damsel in distress plot, Elvis looking guy. Not good. Not a good movie. I did not have a great time watching this. Would it have been better if I'd seen the other Blood Island films? Probably. You can let me know down in the comments below. But I do feel very lucky to now have this Beast of Blood figure. That is just such a weird, fun thing to own.
A wave of depraved and corrupt horror videos.
People think that I create horror. Horror is already out there.
Censor. From 2021, a screener at the British Board of Film Classification, who has earned a reputation for being the strictest censor of violent films, begins to spiral out of control after viewing a low-budget horror with similarities to the disappearance of her sister. Man, after those last 2 films, I really need to talk about a great movie, and I do think Censor is. I've been such a huge fan of it ever since it first came out back in 2021. Really happy to own this nice Vinegar Syndrome release of it. And yes, it's a really weird horror film, but it's also got such an interesting story. I love that it takes place in the 1980s, and it's about the video nasties era, that time in Britain when horror movies were being heavily censored for violent content. Just the kind of movies like Scared to Death and Beast of Blood are the kind of movies that this main character is just tearing apart, censoring down. And it's a really interesting telling of that time in history without ever getting overly preachy about how horror movies are great, they should never be censored. Like, we're horror fans, we're watching this, we know that. The movie just dives into what a person like this who does this job might be like. And when she becomes obsessed with this one filmmaker, a fictional filmmaker within the world of this movie, because his films have an actress in it that looks like her sister that disappeared long ago, and she's diving into these movies trying to find this filmmaker, trying to find her sister. A little bit like the recent horror movie Shelby Oaks, I guess. But this is such a weirder, more trippy kind of movie, and one that is much more morally ambiguous, where you don't really know, like, who is the good guy, who's the bad guy, what's going on? Is she losing her mind? Or is there something bizarre, perhaps occulty going on with these films? I love the aesthetic of it, the music, the creepy, unsettling mood. The films that she watches that exist within this are so creepy. Like, they're really, really scary in such a cool way. I absolutely love Censor. Such a great story, but really weird and unpredictable. Tilbury from 1987. In 1940 Iceland, a country boy goes to work for the British Army to find what became of his childhood sweetheart. He soon discovers that she's having an affair with a British soldier who may be a peculiar kind of monster. So this is an Icelandic folk horror film that I first saw because of this beautiful Severin box set of folk horror movies, All the Haunts Be Ours, but it's actually now widely available on streaming. It's not the kind of movie I would think would be, but it is. It's super short. It's only 57 minutes long. It's about a monster in Icelandic folklore called a Tilbury. Let me explain to you what the heck this thing is. A Tilbury is made when a woman steals a rib from a freshly buried body, wraps it in wool, hides it between her breasts, and spills blessed, consecrated communion wine on it. This brings it to life. Then once created, the Tilbury is an imp who steals milk from other people's livestock and comes home to vomit the milk into a butter that the woman can then use for food or to sell. And it becomes her little imp creature to do this for her. And she feeds it through milk given through her thigh. It is so bizarre. And I was like flabbergasted when I first watched this movie at this insane folklore that I never heard of before, but made for a really cool movie. I mean, because it's so short, that really helps. Like, it really just gets in, gets out. It just tells a strange and interesting story, actually about pretty interesting characters. This guy just trying to figure out what's going on with his dream girl, and she's very much portrayed as the dream perfect woman, except for the fact that she seems to have created a Tilbury. It's got great 1940s wartime kind of atmosphere. There's even this great scene at a dance that has an extended dance sequence, as if this movie couldn't possibly get any weirder. And by the end of it, I almost couldn't believe what I was looking at. Like, it is so peculiar, it is so eccentric, but I really think if you're interested in monster legends from other cultures, this one is really worth the only 57 minutes it's going to take to check it out.
But not nice people.
Oh no, nasty people.
She's pretty.
She's just what we've been waiting for.
The Pit from 1981. A lonely, disturbed boy discovers a pit full of carnivorous troll-like creatures and begins luring people he dislikes to their deaths. So I first watched this movie in the middle of the night at an all-night horror marathon that me and some friends actually did just in my basement, and it was kind of an amazing experience and kind of a horrible experience. The first half, me and one of my buddies was still awake, and we were the only ones still watching, and we were dying laughing at this absolutely insane, bonkers, deranged movie that is so off, so creepy, so like pervy and and uncomfortable in a hilarious way. It's about this kid who's like the weirdest, most off-putting child you've ever seen in your life, who regularly talks to his teddy bear that talks to him back and tells him to do horrible things, often involving his adult babysitter that he is obsessed with. It is so off-putting. Like, it is so like, get this thing away from me, but we were cracking up laughing at how insane it is. And then about halfway through, my buddy fell asleep. I was the last man standing. I was the only one watching. And then I had a horrible time with it. Just watching it alone, it was like too terrible. So like, it's a bad movie, guys. But I admit, it's got a lot of imagination. And I do think the first half is unequivocally just better, while the second half becomes a little bit more of people just on the hunt for the troll-like creatures, yes, that live in this pit that actually look pretty cool. They have a pretty cool monster design. I got to kind of walk down memory lane with this movie recently because my buddy Mike Bracken at the Horror Geek channel put out a video on this. A great video. It was hilarious. It was so much fun to watch him make fun of this movie. And don't just take it from me. Mike said something like, it's a really weird movie even by the standards of his channel, and that's really saying something.
But for a significant sum, we'll build a double to send in for your execution.
Infinity Pool. From 2023, a wealthy tourist couple vacationing in a luxurious but corrupt island resort discover a shocking system that allows the rich to commit crimes without consequences. Definitely one of the top directors of weird, trippy horror movies is David Cronenberg. But what about his son, Brandon Cronenberg, who is slowly making a big name for himself in the horror scene? This one is directed by him, and it will always hold a bit of a special place in my heart because it's the last movie I ever rented from Redbox. May Redbox rest in peace. I'll miss you. Not really that much, but you know, it was like the last breath of the video store. So gotta respect it a little bit. And starring two favorite people of cult horror films today, Alexander Skarsgård and Mia Goth. See, Alexander Skarsgård is not with Mia Goth. He's with his wife, but she pulls him in to her freakish world of rich vacationers who come to this island, do horrible things, and then have to be executed. But what if you could clone yourself and execute that person instead? And then you can do whatever you want. But at what point do you know if you are your same self or if you're now the clone? If you executed yourself, you're now just a clone. Weird, trippy stuff. Much like David Cronenberg likes the melding of technology and flesh and violence and sex. Brandon Cronenberg is very much playing with those same themes as well. And I thought this film was so interesting for the first half. I thought it was building such a fascinating plot. In the second half, I did feel like it becomes a little bit weird for weird's sake. Gets super trippy, super bizarre. Not always in a way that I think was very satisfying or earned. But by the end, Mia Goth is giving a performance for the ages in terms of like Nicolas Cage style acting. Like, I do feel like the renewed popularity of Nicolas Cage has kind of emboldened actors to just go face off crazy. And that is what Mia Goth does in here. And it is a sight to behold.
I hear you're having trouble with a snake.
Ah, and you're going to uphold family tradition and slay the beastie.
The Lair of the White Worm from 1988. When an archaeologist uncovers a strange skull in a foreign land, the residents of a nearby town begin to disappear, possibly the work of a woman who worships an ancient god. Definitely a very weird horror film, but probably more accessible, more entertaining, and more good than a lot of the movies on this list. It's directed by Ken Russell and is actually based on a novel from Bram Stoker. But what's interesting is, so I've not actually read the novel itself, this is a little bit more of a vampire story than even the original novel is, probably taking a little bit of influences from Bram Stoker's other work, such as Dracula. Although this isn't straight up normal vampires, it's a different take. It very much uses snakes, as this is a snake god that this woman serves. It's like a cult of vampiric serpent creatures. Rather than drinking blood from the neck, this woman uses venom, hypnosis, ritual sacrifice to kill people. It's a folk horror movie. It's pagan god worship. And I love those kind of themes in horror movies. And I thought this was was a really, really cool version of it. Amanda Donahue is fantastic as our lead villain, basically the vampire countess of the story. She looks so cool when she's fully vamped out with her fangs and blue skin. It's such a great look. And Hugh Grant and Peter Capaldi are actually in here and very young, early in their careers. And Hugh Grant is an actor I'm a big fan of. Overall, I like the group of characters. I like the European countryside atmosphere of this movie. It is totally outlandish. It's wild. It's got some bizarre religious imagery to it that it's some of the strangest I've ever seen. So I really like this movie. I think it's good in addition to being super weird. Devil Fetus from 1983. After a woman purchases an antique vase at a market, she is possessed, impregnated, and killed by a demonic creature. 12 years later, the demon returns to further curse her family. So this is a Hong Kong black magic Cat 3 horror movie that I actually saw because I picked it up on Vinegar Syndrome Blu-ray. I'm holding it like this because this is kind of an explicit cover and YouTube would probably not like me to show it. But there you go, Devil Fetus. And I checked it out because I've heard it was just very off the wall crazy. And it definitely is. Now, I'll just warn you, it's a full-on exploitation movie. It's got animal violence, mostly fake, but I think there's a bird that might have gotten actually harmed on screen, which sucks. It's got SA, it's got crazy violence, but it's definitely at its most fun because of its awesome practical effects, especially at the beginning and the ending. The beginning is where we get this kind of imagery right here with a woman having relations with a disgusting looking demon creature. Think possession, except less tentacles, more just goop. And the end when there's a showdown with the demons. I mean, the imagery gets so wild. The monsters, the stop motion effects. It's very original Evil Dead-like in a lot of ways. In the middle, there's still some crazy stuff for sure, but the pacing's a little bit slower. And I will say weirdness in a movie affects me less when I'm less invested in the story and the characters. And I was not super invested here. Like, the plot is, dare I say, a little incomprehensible, not super together or interesting. And if I'm like really into the movie and I'm sucked into the reality of it, and then there's some deranged, crazy stuff going on, that's going to really blow my mind. I didn't feel that in this movie, more appreciating the insanity a little bit from a distance. The title also might be a little bit misleading for you. There's not a lot of like demonic babies running around. There actually is in The Demon's Baby, which is another Hong Kong horror film released on Vinegar Syndrome in this 3-pack made in Hong Kong that I got, and that's also a good one. So there you go, 2 demon baby horror movies from Vinegar Syndrome from Hong Kong. If for the weirdos out there who are in the mood for that sort of thing. Together from 2025. With a move to the countryside already testing the limits of a couple's relationship, a supernatural encounter begins an extreme transformation of their love, their lives, and their flesh. So I thought it would be fun to bookend this list with 2 freakish new horror movies that are about a couple staying in a cabin in the woods, with Keeper being the latest one, and Together being the one that came out a few months ago. And I will say, this is one that I heard was really crazy, really weird before I saw it. And while I was a big fan of the movie, I liked it a lot, it was less weird, less gross than I expected. I think maybe I've been a little bit spoiled by The Substance from last year, which is probably the most repulsive and disgusting body horror movie I've ever seen in my life. Funny thing is, I like Together more, but it is not near as disgusting. So its weirdness didn't blow me away as much as The Keeper, but I still really liked it, and it's still nuts. Now, it's starring Dave Franco and Alison Brie, really, really good in this film, a real-life married couple, and therefore feel incredibly authentic as a couple here, who have some interesting relationship drama going on, with him being kind of a failed musician, her a career woman, her life normal, put together, his kind of falling apart and feeling inadequate. I just thought that was a really interesting dynamic to explore in a movie like this. And the central horror idea that is sold for this movie is that they are becoming one. Something happens that is making their flesh come together as one, and that allows for some really wild, gross sequences. Something else I'm kind of fascinated by that's going on with this film behind the scenes is it's currently being sued by this very small indie comedy that uses a similar idea that they say was plagiarized with this film. I don't know what's going to come of that. If there's any truth to it, I hope those people are well compensated, but I'm glad this movie was made to be a horror film because I think it's such a good idea to shock, to horrify, and I just think it's executed really, really well. Before I go, I just want to send out a massive thank you to my patrons who truly make this channel possible. Thank you guys so much for supporting me. And if anyone else wants to support me, there's always a link to my Patreon in the description below. And I want to send out a massive shout out to Madam Jojo, Tim Haffinger, and Brian Burns. You guys absolutely rule. If you want to check any of these out for yourself, I do have streaming options right here on the screen, but of course Keeper is still in theaters and some of these are just available on physical media. So I also have links to the physical media in the description below, and using those does help support the channel. What are some other weird, trippy horror movies that you would recommend? Please let me know down in the comments below, and if you want to hang out with me more, you can click the video on the screen. Thank you guys so much. Don't forget to enjoy yourselves today, have some fun, and I'll see you next time. Bye.